The Jareen Collective, crystalline beings who communicate through psionic resonance, broadcast their victory ceremony across the conquered territories of the Orion Arm. On the fallen Veldari homeworld, billions watch in silent horror as their once proud emperor kneels before the Jareen subjugator, his eyes vacant as he places his ancestral crown into alien appendages. The crown shatters, its fragments absorbed into the subjugator's glittering form. In the aftermath of the ceremony, Veldari citizens shuffle through the once vibrant streets of Califar, their expressions blank and movements mechanical. The grand libraries, repositories of 20,000 years of Veldari philosophy and art, stand empty as archivists systematically transfer data crystals to Jareen collection vessels. The crystalline conquerors find particular value in emotional expressions, which they cannot produce themselves but can experience as complex harmonic patterns within their hive consciousness. Deep within the fallen capital's underground transport network, a single Veldari female named Miratel watches the proceedings through hacked surveillance feeds. Her mind protected by an ancient family technique of mental discipline, she remains one of the few uncaptured resistance members. She records the atrocities with trembling hands, knowing her people's subjugation must be documented, even if no one remains to witness it. 3 sectors away, the Mektali technocracy falls with even less resistance. The Jareen simply redirect the Mektali's automated defense grid against their own population centers, forcing an immediate surrender. The technocracy's governing algorithm, designed to make perfect decisions based on survival probability, calculates that submission provides a 0.02% higher survival rate than resistance. The Mektali Prime Director, overriding the algorithm for the first time in their history, attempts to initiate the civilization's self-destruct protocols rather than submit. He is subdued by his own security forces, already under Jareen influence. In the crystalline chambers of the Jareen Council, 13 primary nodes merge their consciousness to experience the conquest simultaneously. The emotional suffering of the conquered species creates beautiful geometric patterns in their shared perception. Fear manifests as pulsing tetrahedrons, despair as slowly rotating dodecahedrons. Council member Xalthep, revered for their artistic interpretation of emotional patterns, composes a resonance poem about the perfect efficiency of their conquest. The poem, translated roughly into human concepts, celebrates the mathematical elegance of subduing 300 systems without depleting their energy reserves. The resistance quotient diminishes by precisely the expected variables, observes the eldest node, a crystalline formation so ancient that its lower segments have transmuted into an unknown element. The algorithmic projection remains accurate. The Council's strategic computation matrix projects total dominance of the Galactic Arm within 5 standard years, with a 99.8% probability of success. The outlying 0.2% is dismissed as a computational error, though the eldest node makes a notation to investigate this anomaly when resources permit. We will integrate the biological consciousness into appropriate matrices, declares another council member. Their technological development indicates potential value for future expansion efforts. None of the Jareen consider the possibility of meaningful resistance. In their 10,000 years of expansion, no species has withstood their psychic subjugation for more than a standard week. Their mathematical models do not account for variables they have never encountered, and as their scout ships approach the unremarkable yellow star housing humanity's homeworld, those variables are about to manifest in ways that will shatter their perfect equations forever. Jareen scout Venka drifts through Earth's asteroid belt, their crystalline form camouflaged against the rocky debris. For 3 local months, they've been studying this unremarkable world. Primitive FTL technology, only 3 modest colonies, and bizarre biological constructs of water and carbon. Venka adjusts their sensory arrays, focusing on a small mining operation on asteroid MX-457. Human workers move equipment between pressurized habitats, their communications transmitted through primitive radio waves rather than the elegant efficiency of thought transference. The scout attempts a standard psychic probe on a lone technician and immediately recoils in pain. The human mind feels like static electricity, chaotic, unpredictable, and strangely resistant. Probability calculation error. Venka records in their mission log. Subject's neural patterns generate interference patterns unlike any cataloged species. Attempting secondary probe. The second attempt yields even more discomfort. The human technician pauses mid-stride, rubbing her temples before continuing her work. Venka observes this with growing fascination. Most species remain entirely unaware of initial probes. When they report these findings, the collective consciousness dismisses it as observer error. Your crystalline structure requires recalibration, comes the response. These primitives cannot possibly resist standard protocols. On Earth, Dr. Eleanor Mbeki jolts awake in her Beijing apartment, blood trickling from her nose. The nightmare, the third this week, had been more vivid than ever. Crystal spiders crawling through her thoughts, seeking something, measuring her somehow. She wipes the blood away with shaking hands and reaches for her tablet. Computer, record neurological anomaly report, timestamp 3:47 hours, she dictates. Subject continues to experience intrusive dream patterns consistent with external psionic interference. Bleeding from nasal cavity observed post-episode, duration approximately 45 seconds. As head of the United Earth Neurological Research Division, Dr. Mbeki has access to global medical data. The pattern is unmistakable. Over the past 2 weeks, reported cases of what media outlets have dubbed nightmare syndrome have increased 4,000%. Symptoms include recurring dreams of crystalline entities, nosebleeds, migraines, and in severe cases, unexplained seizures. At Space Command Headquarters in Geneva, Admiral Sophia Chen studies sensor logs from the Jupiter monitoring station. The energy spikes at the edge of the solar system appeared periodically over the last 3 months, always brief, always just outside conventional detection parameters. Run the enhanced spectrum analysis again, she orders her technical team. Compare with all known engine signatures. No matches. Admiral, reports Lieutenant Dias. Whatever it is, it's not using any propulsion system we've encountered. Chen frowns, her instincts from 30 years of service screaming that something is wrong. When she brings her concerns to the United Earth Council that afternoon, the reaction is predictable. Censor ghosts, dismisses the economic minister, or natural phenomena. We have real issues to address. The Mars colony is demanding additional water rights again. That night, Chen returns to her apartment overlooking Lake Geneva. Her 14-year-old daughter Lily is already asleep when she arrives. Chen checks on her, a ritual from when Lily was a baby. The girl's face is peaceful for a moment, then contorts in distress. The shiny people, Lily murmurs, still asleep. They're coming to make us all quiet inside. Chen freezes, her blood turning cold. She has told no one about the sensor readings, not even her daughter. In the asteroid belt, Venka completes the final survey and prepares for departure. Their mission parameters have been fulfilled, albeit with anomalous results. The subjugation fleet will arrive within 1 local month, and the collective will add another unremarkable species to its collection. As the scout ship activates its dimensional drive, Venka experiences an unauthorized thought, something approaching curiosity about these strange humans and their noisy minds. The collective immediately suppresses this deviation, but not before Venka wonders, for 1.4 seconds, whether the probability calculations might actually be flawed. The Zhurine arrival is sudden and overwhelming. 27 crystalline ships materializing in Earth orbit, their forms resembling massive geometric fractals that refract sunlight into prismatic patterns across the sky. Cities around the world report the phenomenon as civilians pour into streets, pointing cameras skyward at the impossible structures now dominating Earth's orbit. Subjugator Xalthep stands at the command node of the flagship, a 12-pointed crystalline formation that serves as both vessel and extension of their consciousness. Unlike other conquest missions, Zalthep has chosen to personally oversee this one after reading Venka's reports of anomalous resistance. Such irregularities warrant investigation by a being of their stature. Begin Surrender Protocol Alpha. Zalthep commands, their thought rippling through the fleet's psychic network. Standard intensity for a Class 3 civilization. The psychic wave cascades toward Earth, invisible to instruments but devastating in effect. In Times Square, pedestrians collapse simultaneously. Pilots lose consciousness mid-flight, sending aircraft plummeting toward population centers. Across the globe, communications falter as operators slump at their stations. But not everyone falls. In the emergency United Nations session hastily convened in Geneva, delegates convulse as the wave hits. The French representative clutches his head and vomits blood across polished marble. The Chinese delegate collapses in violent seizures, foams speckling her lips. The Russian ambassador claws at his own eyes, screaming about crystal spiders. Admiral Sophia Chen, gripping the podium with white knuckles, remains standing. Blood vessels burst in her eyes, crimson tears streaming down her cheeks. Every nerve ending screams in protest, but 30 years of combat discipline holds her upright. There, in our heads, she gasps to the few delegates still conscious. This is an attack. Through the haze of agony, Chen activates her neural implant, standard issue for high-ranking United Earth military personnel. The security protocols bypass normal authorization channels, giving her emergency access to Earth's orbital defense grid. Authorization, Chen Alpha 7 to 9 Epsilon. She rasps, blood dripping from her nose onto the command interface projected before her. Activate orbital platforms 3 through 17. Target unknown vessels. Fire. Aboard the command node, Zalthep increases the psychic pressure tenfold, confusion rippling through their crystalline structure. Never in 800 years of subjugation missions has Zalthep encountered such resistance to the initial wave. Anomaly detected, reports a secondary node. Multiple subjects maintaining neural independence despite Class A suppression field. Before Zalthep can process this information, alarms resonate through the collective consciousness. The humans' primitive orbital weapons platforms are powering up, an impossibility during a surrender protocol. Defensive matrices inactive, warns another node. Standard procedure dictates. The warning shatters as the first kinetic rods strike the Jareen vessels. The ships, optimized for psychic warfare rather than physical defense, hadn't bothered raising shields against a supposedly incapacitated enemy. A support vessel disintegrates spectacularly, its crystalline fragments raining down over the Atlantic in a glittering meteor shower. Zalthep, experiencing genuine shock for the first time in centuries, feels the death echo of hundreds of collective members aboard the destroyed vessel. The sensation is so disturbing that they momentarily lose connection with the fleet's psychic network. Reconfigure approach, Zalthep commands, their thought voice lacking its usual harmonic perfection. Activate defensive matrices, withdraw to lunar orbit, and establish containment perimeter. The order, a tactical retreat, sends ripples of dissonance through the collective. No subjugation mission in recorded history has ever required a defensive posture. As the remaining vessels pull back, Zalthep studies the readouts from the psychic wave. These humans aren't just resisting. Some of them appear to be generating counterharmonics, patterns that actively disrupt Jareen psychic techniques. Such an adaptation should be evolutionarily impossible for non-psionic species. For 3.7 seconds, Zalthep experiences an unfamiliar thought pattern. Doubt. In a secure bunker beneath Geneva, Dr. Eleanor Mbeki performs emergency surgery on Admiral Chen. The surgical suite, hastily converted from a research laboratory, hums with improvised medical equipment. Chen's brain scans project on floating holographic displays, revealing unusual activity in her parietal lobe. Fascinating, Mbeki murmurs, adjusting the neural stabilizer above Chen's unconscious form. The activity pattern matches exactly what I've been seeing in nightmare syndrome patients, but amplified tenfold. The Admiral's face twitches in pain even under heavy sedation. Mbiki notes the reaction and administers another dose of neural blockers. "I've never seen anyone withstand that level of psychic assault," says General Roberts, observing from behind a containment field. "Half the Security Council is dead or catatonic. What makes her different?" Mbiki points to a strange formation in Chen's parietal cortex. "This neural structure, it's like natural shielding. I've been studying similar formations in nightmare syndrome patients for weeks." She enlarges the hologram. "See this dendrite formation? It's generating a kind of mental static." 12 hours later, Chen regains consciousness with a gasp. Her eyes focus on Mbiki's face hovering above her. "The ships," Chen croaks. "Did we?" "We damaged 3, destroyed 1 completely," Mbiki answers. "They've retreated to lunar orbit." Chen struggles to sit up. "I felt them. In my head." They were surprised. Mbiki helps her up, studying her intently. "You sensed their emotions." "Not emotions exactly. More like disruption in a pattern." Chen rubs her temples. "They expected us to just surrender. They've never failed before." General Roberts steps forward. "Admiral, we need you in command." The lunar observatories report their regrouping. As Chen is helped from the room, Mbiki turns to her research assistant. "Pull every file we have on evolutionary neuroadaptation. Cross-reference with predator-prey sensory development." Her mind races, connecting patterns from her years of research. "I think I know why we're resistant." In her laboratory, Mbiki reviews Earth's evolutionary history. Early humans evolved alongside apex predators that used rudimentary psychic hunting techniques, the prehistoric Panther FC, and certain perihuman species. She displays fossil records alongside brain scans. "We developed neural static as a defense mechanism. It's in our DNA, a countermeasure against mental invasion that became unnecessary as those predators went extinct, but the adaptation remained dormant in our genome." Meanwhile, the Jareen Council receives Xalthep's report with disbelief. The eldest node's crystalline structure pulses with agitation. "Impossible." The eldest node's thought reverberates. "No non-chionic species has ever resisted surrender protocols." "The evidence is conclusive," Xalthep transmits, replaying the psychic feedback data. "Not only do they resist, a small percentage appear capable of generating counterharmonics." The chamber falls silent, an unusual occurrence in the normally resonant council space. Finally, the eldest makes an unprecedented decision. Earth represents a contamination risk to all controlled territories. Standard conquest protocol is suspended. The node's crystal facets darken ominously. Authorization granted for complete planetary sterilization. Across the galaxy, a specialized Jareen fleet alters course. The sterilization vessels, never before needed in a conquest, begin their journey toward Sol. Their planet-killing capacity has remained theoretical until now. In her laboratory, Mbeki makes a breakthrough. Further testing reveals that Chen is among the 0.5% of humans who possess not just resistance, but counter-influence capabilities. Examining brain tissue samples from this group, Mbeki develops neural dampening technology, reverse engineering the natural defenses of the resistant population. The prototype resembles a simple metallic circlet. When Chen tests it, the device amplifies her natural resistance tenfold. Mass production begins immediately. Chen orders, knowing that their survival depends on deploying this technology before the alien reinforcements arrive. "How long do we have, Dr. Mbeki?" Mbeki studies astronomical calculations on her screen. Based on their observed FTL capabilities and last known positions, less than 2 weeks. Chen nods grimly. "Then we have 11 days to prepare humanity for the fight of our existence." Commander Jackson Tran checks his neural dampener for the 3rd time as the captured Jareen scout vessel accelerates toward the massive command ship. The dampeners, Dr. Mbiki's creation, sit uncomfortably against his temples, but they're the only protection his team has against psychic detection. Approaching docking range, whispers Lieutenant Rosa Kimura, her hand steady on the crystalline controls despite having learned to pilot the alien craft just days earlier. Remember, we can't mask our physical presence, only our thoughts. The 5-person team represents Earth's best hope. 2 Special Forces operators, a xenolinguistics expert, a systems engineer, and Tran himself. Their mission seemed simple in planning. Infiltrate a Jareen command ship, gather intelligence on fleet movements, then escape before detection. We're bypassing their equivalent of an airlock, says Dr. Amit Patel, the systems engineer. The crystalline membrane should recognize this vessel's signature. The scout ship merges seamlessly with the larger vessel's hull, the materials flowing together like liquid glass before solidifying again. The team moves silently through pulsing crystalline corridors that seem to subtly change configuration with each passing moment. This way, Tran whispers, following the schematics derived from the scout ship's navigation system. Intelligence hub should be 2 junctions ahead. Instead, they find something else entirely. A massive chamber filled with thousands of glowing crystalline matrices, each about the size of a human skull, arranged in geometric patterns across the walls and ceiling. My God, breathes Dr. Sarah Chen, the xenolinguistics expert. These patterns, they're not random. They're language, multiple languages. Tran approaches one of the crystals cautiously. Unlike the blue-white of the Jareen structures, these glow with a faint amber luminescence. When he reaches toward one, it pulses brighter in response. Don't touch it, Patil warns, but too late. As Tran's fingers contact the crystal, a jolt of energy surges through him. He collapses, his body convulsing as his neural dampener overloads in a shower of sparks. Inside Tran's mind, a foreign consciousness unfolds like a flower blooming in fast forward. Images flood his perception, a homeworld of spiraling towers, fleet formations, and finally, the moment of conquest, Jareen vessels descending from the sky, populations falling to their knees as one. I am Carol, a voice speaks directly into his thoughts. Last Admiral of the Veldari Defense Fleet. You are, not Jareen. Through the haze of shared consciousness, Tran manages to form a coherent thought. Human. From Earth. We're fighting them. The presence in his mind recoils in shock. Fighting. Impossible. None resists the collective. We do. Tran projects, sharing images of the battle for Earth, the destroyed Jareen vessel, Admiral Chen standing against the psychic assault. Over their secure comlink, Dr. Mbiki's voice cuts through Tran's mental conversation. Commander, your neural patterns are destabilizing. Break contact immediately. With tremendous effort, Tran pulls his hand away from the crystal. As the connection severs, he hears Carol's final desperate thought. Take us with you. They're storage devices. Tran gasps to his team as they help him up. Not data. People. Consciousness extracted and preserved. Understanding dawns on Dr. Chen's face. They're harvesting minds for information. Against protocol, but following instinct, Tran carefully extracts several crystals. As they secure the matrices, alarms pulse through the ship. Not sound, but waves of psychic energy that even the dampeners can't completely block. We've been detected, Kimura announces. Extraction plan Alpha compromised. Their escape becomes a desperate fight through crystalline corridors that actively reconfigure to trap them. The team makes it to an emergency pod, but pursuit is close behind. As they jettison from the command ship, crystalline projectiles shatter against their hull. The pod crashes in the Canadian wilderness, its systems failing on impact. As the team struggles from the wreckage, they spot airborne shapes on the horizon. Jareen hunter forms deployed to recover the stolen crystals. Admiral, Tran transmits on an emergency frequency. We have critical intelligence and refugees. Request immediate extraction. We're not alone anymore. 6 months after first contact, Earth bears the scars of 3 major Jareen assaults. The ruins of Shanghai smolder where a crystalline dreadnought crashed after its psychic core was disrupted. The Amazon basin glows faintly at night, soil contaminated with fragments of shattered Jareen hunter forms. Yet humanity survives, adapting with the tenacity that has become their hallmark. The starship Defiance, Admiral Chen's flagship, emerges from FTL near Epsilon Eridani, its hull a patchwork of repairs and modifications. Behind it follows a fleet of mismatched vessels, retrofitted Earth cargo ships with hastily mounted weapon systems, ancient Veldari dreadnoughts with elegant spiral hulls, and several stolen Jareen scouts piloted by human-alien hybrid crews. On the Defiance's bridge, Admiral Chen studies tactical projections. Half her face shows metal implants where Jareen crystal shards nearly killed her during the Third Earth assault. Forward Scout confirms Jareen presence on the main planetoid, reports Commander Tran, now her second in command. Approximately 12,000 enslaved Mektali processing crystalline resources for the war effort. And the psychic transmitter? Chen asks. Central complex, heavily guarded. Dr. Mbiki's team believes it's coordinating enslavement operations for this entire sector. Ken turns to face the unusual figure standing silently at tactical. Kirill, former Veldari admiral, now inhabits a synthetic body developed by Dr. Mbiki. His crystalline brain connects to the android form through a complex neural interface. Kirill, your assessment. The Veldari's synthetic features remain expressionless, but his voice carries the weight of personal vengeance. The Jareen never expect direct assaults. Their psychological warfare has made conventional attacks unnecessary for millennia. Your plan may succeed through sheer audacity. Chin nods grimly. Prepare all ships for combat. Commence Operation Breaklight. The fleet divides, with Chen leading the main assault force directly toward the Jareen base, a seemingly suicidal frontal attack. Jareen defense vessels rise to meet them, their crystalline hulls refracting light into deadly energy beams. Meanwhile, Commander Tran leads a ground team of 20 Psi warriors, humans with the strongest counter-influence abilities, equipped with Mbiki's latest psychic amplifiers. Their shuttle skims the planetoid surface, avoiding detection as the main fleet draws the enemy's attention. Remember, Tran tells his team, our objective isn't conventional victory. We're here to break the psychic chains. The space battle intensifies as Chen's forces engage at point-blank range, a tactic the Jareen consider primitive and inefficient. 3 Earth vessels are destroyed in the first exchange, but their sacrifice allows the remaining ships to penetrate the defensive perimeter. Admiral, Kirill warns, they're calling reinforcements from neighboring systems. We have perhaps 20 minutes before we're overwhelmed. Chen's response is cut short as a Jareen beam slices through the Defiance's port section. Emergency bulkhead seal, but a third of the bridge crew is lost instantly. On the surface, Tran's team infiltrates the crystalline citadel. 2 Psi warriors collapse, their minds shattered by proximity to the psychic transmitter. The rest press forward, planting Mbiki's devices at key junctions in the crystalline structure. Final amplifier in position, reports Lieutenant Kimura, ready to activate on your command. Tran checks tactical displays showing Chen's fleet surrounded, outgunned, with no possible path to conventional victory. Activate now. The amplifiers powered up simultaneously, broadcasting a counter-frequency that disrupts the Jareen control network. Throughout the complex, enslaved Mektali pause in their work, confusion giving way to dawning awareness. The psychic chains, maintained for years, weaken and snap. Above, Chen watches in amazement as Jareen vessels suddenly lose coordination, their movements becoming erratic as the enslaved crews aboard begin to resist. A priority transmission comes through from Earth Defense Command. Admiral, we're detecting similar uprisings across 11 other systems simultaneously. The resistance network is operational. They're fighting back. Chen allows herself a moment of fierce pride before turning to damage control. Half her fleet is destroyed, but humanity's first counter-offensive has achieved the impossible, proof that the Jareen can be defeated. As the liberated Mactali join Tran's forces, the citadel falls from within. For the first time in recorded history, a Jareen-controlled world has been freed. The Jareen home system lies shrouded in a nebula of crystalline particles that glitter like diamond dust against the void. No conventional ship has ever penetrated this defensive barrier. The microscopic shards slice through whole materials like molecular razors, rendering standard approach impossible. Admiral Chen stands on the observation deck of the Liberation, a Jareen dreadnought captured and repurposed for this final mission. Her cybernetic implants hum softly as they interface with the ship's crystalline systems. Through the viewport, 17 vessels of various designs hold formation, the combined fleet of the newly formed alliance, representing species that were bitter enemies before Jareen conquest united them in suffering. Final checks complete, reports Kirill, the synthetic body moving with fluid grace that belies its artificial nature. The captured navigation protocols are functioning. The nebula will recognize our vessels as Jareen. And if they've changed the recognition codes, asks Chen. Then we die quickly. Kirill responds with the pragmatism of a being who has already experienced death once. The fleet accelerates into the glittering cloud. Microscopic crystals part around their hulls, recognizing the Jareen molecular signature replicated on their exteriors. Through gaps in the nebula, they glimpse their target for the first time, the synchronization nexus, a crystalline structure the size of Earth's moon, pulsing with blue-white energy that coordinates the hive mind across the galaxy. Aboard the lead insertion vessel, Commander Tran briefs the ground team. Besides him stands Lili Chen, the Admiral's daughter, now 19 and the strongest human psi talent ever measured. Once we breach the outer shell, we'll have exactly 17 minutes to reach the central chamber before their defensive systems adapt to our presence, Tran explains. Dr. Mbiki's device must be placed at the exact coordinates we've identified. Lily adjusts her advanced neural amplifier, a sleek circlet that enhances her natural abilities tenfold. I can feel them already, she says quietly. Billions of minds, all connected. It's beautiful in a terrible way. Remember your training, Tran tells her. Don't try to process all of it. Focus on finding the pathways Dr. Mbiki identified. The fleet is detected halfway to the nexus. Defensive platforms activate, launching crystalline interceptors that move with impossible speed. The space battle erupts with devastating ferocity, the Alliance vessels sacrificing themselves to clear a path for the insertion team. Admiral Chen's flagship takes critical damage in the first exchange. Life support systems fail across multiple decks, emergency bulkheads sealing automatically to preserve the remaining atmosphere. Divert all power to forward shields, Chen orders, blood trickling from her nose as the ship's psychic defenses strain against increasing pressure. The insertion vessel must reach the nexus. Through the chaos, Tran's team successfully docks with the nexus. They breach the outer shell using modified Jareen cutting tools, entering a realm of geometric perfection. Crystalline corridors arranged in multidimensional patterns that confuse human perception. The team fights through waves of defenders, not just Jareen forms, but enslaved soldiers from dozens of conquered species. They reach the central chamber only to find Southep waiting, evolved into a towering crystalline entity connected directly to the nexus itself, a being of pure psychic energy more powerful than any they've encountered. Humans. Xalthep's thought voice resonates painfully in their minds. You have accomplished what no species has attempted in 10,000 years. This anomaly requires direct intervention. Half the team collapses instantly, their neural dampeners overwhelmed by Xalthep's power. Tran remains standing through sheer will, but blood streams from his eyes and ears. Only Lily appears unaffected, her amplifier glowing with increasing intensity. Now, Dr. Mbeki, Tran shouts into his communicator. Across the system, aboard the failing flagship, Dr. Mbeki activates her final creation. Not a weapon, but a psychic transmitter connected directly to Lily's unique neural pattern. The girl becomes a conduit for the collective traumatic experiences of every species the Jareen have conquered, broadcasting not hatred but understanding, forcing empathy into a hive mind that has never comprehended individual suffering. Zalthep staggers, crystalline form resonating with disharmony as alien emotions flood its perception. The psychic feedback shatters the Jareen hive mind. Throughout the galaxy, crystalline beings experience individuality for the first time, some violently fragmenting into inert shards, unable to process the emotional overload. Others, suddenly disconnected from the collective consciousness, fall into confused silence. In the central chamber of the Nexus, Zalthep's massive form trembles, fracture lines spreading across its crystalline surface. Through Lily's neural connection, the being experiences every moment of suffering it has inflicted across centuries of conquest. This pain. Zalthep's thought voice wavers, no longer the perfect harmonic it once was. It belongs to individuals, not variables in an equation. Lily stands unwavering, her amplifier channeling the emotional testimony of billions. Tears stream down her face, not her own but those of countless beings whose minds she temporarily carries. They were people, she says simply, not resources, not conquest statistics. People with lives and dreams and families. For the first time in its existence, Zalthep comprehends the concept of empathy, and the magnitude of what the collective has done is overwhelming. The crystalline entity collapses inward, not destroyed but fundamentally transformed. 3 months later, representatives from 47 formerly subjugated species gather in Earth's rebuilt United Nations chamber. The temporary alliance forged in war now faces a more complex challenge, building peace among civilizations that were enemies before Jareen conquest united them. Admiral Chen, her body now partially cybernetic after sustaining critical injuries in the final battle, addresses the assembly. The hall falls silent as she moves to the podium, her movements slightly mechanical but her voice strong. We stand at a crossroads unprecedented in our collective histories, she begins. For too long, we existed in isolation or conflict, easy prey for the Jareen divide and conquer strategy. Today, I propose a different path, the Galactic Concordat. Projected behind her, the Concordat Charter outlines a federation where each species governs itself while contributing to mutual defense and cultural exchange. Unlike the empires of old, this alliance would be built on respect for diversity rather than dominance. We have all lost too much to return to our old rivalries. Chen continues, her gaze sweeping across delegates whose ancestral enemies now sit beside them. The Jareen taught us the cost of perfect unity without compassion. Let us create imperfect harmony tempered with understanding. The vote is not unanimous, but the Concordat passes. Earth becomes its headquarters, not because humans demand it, but because their world represents the first successful resistance and the birthplace of liberation. At Dr. Mbiki's Institute for Interspecies Psychology, the work of healing continues. Millions of consciousnesses still remain trapped in Jareen storage crystals. Commander Tran leads the recovery efforts, his expertise in interfacing with the alien technology now focused on restoration rather than warfare. In the new council chamber, built from repurposed Jareen crystals that now glow with warm amber light, an unusual figure approaches the podium. Former subjugator Zalthep, now simply Zal, stands before representatives of worlds it once conquered. Its crystalline form is smaller now, reconfigured without the power structures that once channeled collective consciousness. I come not to seek forgiveness, which I do not deserve, Zal begins, its thought voice humble where once it commanded, but to understand what we lacked. We were perfect in our unity, yet you, fragile, divided, emotional beings, defeated us. I believe what you call humanity is not unique to humans, but a potential in all sentient life that we suppressed in ourselves. I wish to learn this humanity, if you will teach me. Murmurs fill the chamber, some angry, some uncertain. As the representatives debate Saul's fate, Lily Chen steps forward. Now the head of the Concordet's Psionic Research Division, her abilities have matured along with her understanding of both human and alien minds. Silently, she touches the crystalline being's surface and shares a vision of possibility. Billions of former Zareen, their individuality restored, helping rebuild what they once destroyed. For the first time in recorded history, a Zareen produces what humans would recognize as tears. The galaxy is changed forever, Lily says, addressing both Saul and the Assembly. Not through conquest or domination, but because fierce humans refused to surrender, and then refused to seek vengeance when victory was ours. That is humanity's true strength.